Welcome back to the Better It Gets podcast. Today I have Kimi Inch on, and Kimi is, well, I pulled this from her website and I love it. The erotic leader the world's been searching for. And I was connected to Kimi through a mutual sister, Tia Lynn, who's also been on the podcast. And the way she made the introduction of Kimi was she is the sweetest dominatrix. So Kimi Inch is the gold standard for erotic leadership, bringing a humble and heart-centered approach to eroticism, sexual healing, and conscious kink. Kimi Inch is a renowned expert on intimacy, conscious kink, and unlocking your body's untapped erotic energy. With over 2 decades of experience and training from top mentors in Tantra, conscious kink, and sacred sexuality, Kimi has helped thousands of clients around the world embody their most powerful selves. Featured on prestigious platforms such as the Oprah Winfrey Network, South by Southwest, Princeton University, and Nightline, Kimi's goal as a pro-Domme, trauma-informed somatic therapist, and sex positive edu-tainer is to provide a safe and pleasure-filled space for exploring parts of ourselves that we rarely dare to look at. Welcome, Kimi.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I always say that I'm in the business of turning people on. That's what I really love, but not just sexually, but to their power, turning them on to their purpose and their presence. And, that's what I love is helping people be guided into erotic wilderness and doing that with conscious kink and tantra and somatic healing. And I love the idea of helping people reclaim themselves and especially the parts that they've been taught to hide because they maybe didn't feel appropriate for polite society. But yeah, I think the erotic isn't just about sex; it's about transformation and transformation through the taboo, which is super powerful. And I also like to think of myself as a motivational spanker as well.
Motivational spanker,
Oh
leading
yeah.
people into the erotic wilderness. I love the poetics of this already. And I'm curious how this all started for you.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I had been turned on by the erotic and sexuality for as long as I can remember. I didn't have a lot of parental supervision growing up, so I could watch, R-rated movies and see all kinds of different types of TV shows. So I wasn't really sheltered in that sense, and I always found sexuality to be fascinating, which I think a lot of kids do as they're growing up. And when I started having sex with my first boyfriend in high school, the first love of my life, as soon as we started exploring together, I was immediately bored. I was like, oh my gosh, is this it? And I was a theater kid growing up, and theater kids are particularly kinky, I like to say. And I was just interested in like, how can we spice things up? Like, how can we, create more intrigue? And so I would suggest dressing up and pretending to be different people or tying each other up or slapping each other in the face. And, my boyfriend at the time, he's 16 years old and he's just happy to be having sex at all. He was very accommodating, but he did one day say like, why are you into all this weird shit? And I had no idea. None of my friends were talking about this sort of stuff. It really wasn't until I moved to Tokyo. I used to be a DJ, and I was in Tokyo as a DJ around 2002, spinning vinyl. That's like how old that was. And I was invited to DJ at fetish parties. And I didn't know what fetish parties were, but I said yes because the price was right. And I was just excited about being invited. And a girlfriend of mine was like, you know what fetish is, right? Like it's like that movie Pulp Fiction, Bring Out the Gimp with like the hoods and the whips and the chains, and it's like violent and scary and dark. And I was like, oh my God, no, I had no idea that's what I was saying yes to. So I convinced her to come along with me because I was still like intrigued. It definitely piqued my interest. So I showed up at this DJ gig at this fetish party, and it's a smoky kind of like warehouse, and people are just dressed up to the nines. They are wearing latex and leather and corsets and schoolgirl uniforms and priest outfits. I mean, you name it, like everyone is dressed up so much. And I was witnessing them. essentially acting like they were different people and tying each other up and slapping each other in the face and on the body. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. Like, this is like what I have been fantasizing about like my whole life. And I just recognized and realized like, oh, these are my people. Like, this is the world that I've been looking for. And I met women who were professional dominatrixes there, and we became friends. And they said, hey, you're a tall, blonde, American 20-year-old girl. Like, you'll get lots of work as a dominatrix. Why don't you come check it out? And I said, yes. And, so much more to that story, but like the rest is history in that sense. That really set me off on this path towards where we are today. And yeah, super, super grateful for how things kind of presented themselves to me and fell into place.
Wow. Wow. It's so beautiful. Something that I notice with almost everyone who comes on and shares their story is that there is this foreshadowing of this blueprint of the thing you're meant to do. And you followed your yes to it. This thing that is extremely taboo, but you were brave enough to go, oh, wait, no, I recognize myself in this space and I'm going to run with this. And so I'm curious, like, okay, what was this next iteration? Like, you come into this dominatrix era as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So when I started doing this work, I was doing it for the paycheck. I thought it was acting. Like, I went to school at Juilliard for acting, and I was like, this is like acting. I can act like a dominatrix. I can be a boss, and I can tell people what to do. And, I thought it was a blast at first, but it really wasn't until I started doing deep inner work on myself, maybe 3 or 4-ish years later. And I started to dive deeper around why I was unhappy in my life and what was going on with that. And I discovered very quickly that I was holding a lot of anger and resentment towards my parents, but especially my father. I definitely had a father wound. And I, because of that, had anger towards men in general. So being put in a position of power where I was the boss and I was telling other people what to do felt really safe. It gave me a sense of control over my life where I felt so disempowered for most of my life growing up. And I realized like, wow, that's actually really clever of me, because I created this opportunity to not only be in control and feel safe, but I actually set up a situation that I could get back at men and get back at my dad by having them pay me to fuck them up for a job, like for a living.
Wow.
And when I was doing work with a somatic therapist, I'm a somatic therapist now, but before all of that, I was working with a somatic therapist, and she looked at me and she said, this work that you're doing could actually be so much more. You're playing really, really small, and you could really be healing people and helping people and empowering people. And at the end of the day, you are a healer. And no one had ever called me a healer before. And I had no idea really what that meant. And I started to think about it, and I was like, well, I am seeing mostly men, but I saw women too, and I saw couples, but I would see these people in their most vulnerable states, like ways that their partners don't see them, ways that their family will never see them, ways that they won't even speak to their therapists about it. Like, there's so much shame around these desires and fantasies that there's such like entrenched shame and secrecy around it, that I got to witness, that I got to not only accept, but celebrate. Like, tell me more about that fantasy. Like, tell me more about that desire. Tell me more about that thing you are holding within yourself, and let me help you bring it to life in a way that feels safe and, accepting and loving. And people would walk out of that play space after playing with me for 1, 2, 3 hours, and they would be completely transformed. They would feel more connected to themselves, and they would feel like they could be a better functioning human in the world, essentially. So it was incredible. And I eventually started studying with, some of the most amazing mentors and people in conscious kink, in Tantra. Went back to school to study somatic therapy. When I finally got back to the States, I was invited to teach women to become professional dominatrixes in the different dungeons and houses in New York City. And right around that time, I think it's 2008 or so, 50 Shades of Grey, the book came out. And then everybody was interested in learning about this whole world. So I was again invited to speak on TV and podcasts and different stages and different settings around my knowledge with all of this. And that started to develop into, training courses and coaching people on how to tap into the power of kink and how to step into these power dynamics with consciousness so it can be brought into other areas of their lives, because kink is really just universal themes that we all experience. Like when we're being kinky and we're playing in that setting, we're playing with power, we're playing with control, we're playing with surrender, we're playing with pain, pleasure. These are things that exist in our lives. And when you're in the play space and you're doing it consciously and with somebody who's committed to it with you, you can create so much opportunity from that space. It could be really amazing practice ground for people to really understand themselves, and not just themselves, but their relationship to their partners and their relationship to life as well. So it's can be really, really powerful. And that's what turns me on. It's been an interesting road since 2002. And it's so exciting to see more and more people being curious and interested in this world, because it's not what people have thought it was. It's actually so imaginative, creative, and can be super powerful.
Mm, so beautiful. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because sex is so taboo still in so many ways. Yeah, it's the thing we all do and the thing that we all desire. Because like you said, it's not just when we're making love or having sex or in the kink. There's so much psychologically tied into it. There are so many pieces that I feel like can be explored through kink. And so to have a safe space to go, oh, this is actually something I desire. And I've been terrified to speak about this, and I've just been holding it in. And then that holding in creates shame and secrecy. And then people are walking around in shame and they can't actually embody their ecstasy or like live their most liberated lives. What do you feel like the world would look like and be like if people were more tapped into conscious kink and erotic leadership?
oh gosh, it's so interesting. I was having a conversation earlier and someone was like, you've been doing this work for, a couple of decades. Do you get bored? And I'm like, I don't know how I could be bored of life force energy and helping people learn what's possible in their erotic lives and connecting them to wholeness. It is so profound. And I work with people, they've been to the therapists for 5, 10, 15 years, and we'll do 1 or 2 sessions and they will be completely transformed. It's that incredible because it's the power of human connection. Our brains can't rewire without being connected to another. And when you're in a vulnerable position, exploring in this way, you can start to move into altered states of consciousness, similar to, medicine journeys, similar to psilocybin and MDMA. And you hear about these types of therapy. And I have to say, like, that's beautiful. I think it's so amazing what these plants and medicines can do to open the door for people in their lives. But it's actually so important for us to know how to open our own doors and to realize that we're the medicine and we hold all of that within ourselves. Like, I think the powers that be, have created such difficulty around understanding our sexuality. We're kept in this repressed, confused state around it because that's the easiest way to control other people. If people knew and truly embodied the fact that they have internal medicine, they don't need anything outside of themselves to feel that sort of ecstasy at the end of the day. That's really hard to control people who know that they're free, inherently that they're free. So that's what gets me so excited about this work, because I know when people can really sense that truth within themselves and connect to that wholeness, that anything is possible. And that, happy people don't go around bullying each other. Like happy people don't, create war. Like it just doesn't work that way. So the more that people can really embody this essence of themselves, this core essence of who they are, before the programming and conditioning, it really can create such a ripple effect. It affects every area of your life and every person you come into contact with. So it's really profound. And, especially when it comes to this idea of erotic leadership. This is a term that I've been using the last 15 years, and it's something I've trademarked because I wanted to update language around kink and around dominance and submission, because erotic leadership is not about power over or controlling another. It's about attunement. It's about guiding, influencing, and inspiring life force energy. And it's about leading with presence and deep listening and conscious power, whether you're in the bedroom or whether you're in business. It's about guiding others to being fully embodied. And you do that yourself. So like that relationship is so different. It's not hierarchical or performative. It's really collaborative and co-created. And, instead of submissive, I like to use the term erotic follower. And the follower is someone who embodies and expresses life force energy. And being able to be the muse of that dynamic is so powerful. It's not a passive role. It's very inspiring, and it creates such a level of electricity in the space. When you do partner dancing like salsa and tango, if both people are really masterful at that role, they are just magic on stage. It's the same thing in the bedroom. Both are needed to create the dance, and both can be masterful. And when both partners are really coming into that situation full and not looking to be filled with the void within themselves, like they fill their own void and they come with a cup overflowing. Oh my gosh, it's fireworks. So I want people to get connected to their power, to their internal medicine, and to, their wholeness, so that they can create, when everybody's cup is full, we all win at the end of the day. So that's the desire, and that's the turn on with it all.
Oh, so beautiful. Yeah, moving from wholeness and the erotic charge of that, right? It's like I was just talking to a sister yesterday about feminine and masculine dynamic, and how when you are surrendering or submitting into your feminine energy, where you are inspiring his leadership, exactly what you said, it's not a passive role.
Totally.
It's the act of non-resistance, of like being in that dance, in that flow, and inspiring the masculine energetic in whatever gender you are to lead in whatever way. And I feel that sex and eroticism is the ultimate playground and space to polarity flex and practice these dynamics. And of course, it's not always, one person embodying one pole. I think the artistry is to be able to move with the authentic current of the moment, and to like feel into where life force is wanting to flow that feels true. There was something you touched on.
Well, I was going to say, as you think on that, when you're erotically intelligent, like you just show up differently. You make bolder choices. You ask for what you want. You become more magnetic, more grounded, more alive, like in your relationships, in your careers, in your life, because this world is craving connection and embodiment and truth. And this, the erotic really meets people at the edge. And from that edge, that's really where transformation becomes not just possible, but it becomes inevitable, in my opinion. You can't really go backwards when when your brain starts to see and your body starts to feel a different experience of life. It's really hard to deny that. And it's almost like your operating system needs to be upgraded. And you can no longer stay stuck or where you were. You're going to be moving forward on some level. And once you get started, it's like, bring it on. Like, give me more, please. Yes, more, please.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I feel like there are infinite layers of eros and eroticism, and it really calls forward your full totality.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, it's like all parts of you are engaged, your energy, your body, your lips, everything is there, moving in the most intimate way possible with another. And the profundity of that and the transformation of that experience is like a medicine ceremony, like you just said. A couple of things have been inspired by this conversation. First of all, I haven't read 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm now inspired. Dive in.
I wouldn't say it's a great read. It's an easy read. It's a very surface level book, but I am very grateful for the way it hit the mainstream and really started to give people permission to want to investigate in the more of eroticism and sexuality. Like, what is this kink thing? What is it? So I'm super grateful for that. So do keep in mind, though, it is definitely a book for the masses, and it's very superficial in a lot of ways.
That's always what's deterred me from it. However, there's a desire to, although I am very in the erotic realms and the
Yeah.
tantric realms, kink has been very foreign to me. I mean, I'm vaguely familiar with like the dom and sub dynamics and some of these pieces and the fetishes and the taboo. However, I know that there's so much artistry to it. I know that there are so many undertones and so many ways that we can heal really deep patterns and layers. And I remember, I think the one and only time that I've been flogged, I was with 5 sisters and we were holding hands on a bed. And he came and he's like a professional flogger. And this whole house that we were at was very kink centric.
Cool.
Everyone was such a sweetheart. And I was like, to mix the like sweetness with the kink, it just, there's a safety and an erotic innocence in that. And when he did it, you know, there was this feeling of, being able to, you know, the consensual piece of like him continually checking in. How does this feel? What is this bringing up? You know, and then to feel like the invigoration of the experience. And, you know, I can imagine that for someone who was spanked when they were younger, that there is a healing component in being able to consciously engage with this energy that could have been really traumatic at one point. So I'm curious, what is a dominatrix? What is a conscious dominatrix? And how does that energy conduct itself for healing?
Oh, well, I love your story, by the way, because flogging is one of my favorites. Impact play is one of my favorites. And you're absolutely right. There's such a negative connotation when it comes to impact play. And it's so cool to be able to give people a different experience of something that maybe holds some distortion around it. Because if you think about in therapy structures, there's some people that like will wear a rubber band around their wrist and like snap it if they want to have a drink or bite their nails, right? Like you've heard of that before. And there's a reason why, because, you know, the subconscious is always operating, it's always scanning the environment. But when you introduce something new into its awareness, it starts to say, oh, like this is different. Like I'm being, you know, given words of affirmation. I'm receiving intense sensation. Like I'm paying attention to what's being said, just like we did when we were kids, if we were spanked for being bad and being wrong and those things, like those make lasting impressions on people. So to be able to rewrite history in a way where the subconscious is paying attention and is learning at a different level while your body's engaged, aroused, turned on, and opened at the same time, it can be so powerful to see that. So to me, like the conscious Dom is like a conductor of sensation. The conscious Dom is a mirror and a midwife to someone's truth. Like when I'm playing with someone, I'm reading their bodies. I'm listening to the between the words moments. I'm listening to the spaciousness. Like I'm dancing with the nervous system. I'm helping people meet parts of themselves that they've been afraid to touch, right? So like it's about just having the right amount of intensity to help people come against that edge, but not to overwhelm them or make them regress or you know, push them past their nervous system's capacity. But when you get right up to that edge and you help them to meet it, they start to widen their container a bit more. You know what I mean? Like they start to say, wow, like life is sometimes really fucking hard, but I'm getting this vlogging right now and I'm okay and I'm supported and I'm loved and I'm fucking resilient. And if I'm that way here, why can't I be like that everywhere?
Right.
I am actually. But sometimes I forget. So I have these moments of play with a play partner that I trust, that I know is in service to my evolution. And it starts to be ingrained more. So, you know, like I said, with the talk therapy, not going to poo poo on top of therapy whatsoever. I think it's super important. And in fact, I work with a lot of clients who see, you know, a traditional therapist while they're seeing me. However, without like having that visceral bodily experience of something, change is not really possible. To really feel it in your tissues and your cells, like that's what creates change. So, you know, sometimes that does mean pain, but if there is pain, it's with purpose always. And sometimes it means pushing the limits, but there's always going to be this container of trust. And in that space, people can release their shame and they can rewrite these patterns and they can reclaim pleasure as their birthright. And that's powerful work. And it's deeply, deeply tender as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you're working with the somatics, but you're also working with this energy that is life force creational power that has been demonized and taboo for so long,
Right.
especially for women, like for a woman to stand up and be a professional dominatrix. Like that's really flipping the script. That is erotic sacred rebellion right there.
Well, yes, girl. So true. So true.
Yeah.
You're a rebel too, in the work that you're doing in the world, like just to claim and own your, desires and your pleasure is such a rebellious act. And, I hope that the work you're doing, and I know the work I'm doing in the world is highly disruptive. And that's the fucking point. We need to wake up.
Yeah.
And if that takes us, an orgasm or a spank, like what have you? You know what I mean? I think healing can happen in so many ways. It can happen in therapy and breath work, and there's so many possibilities. I just think it's fun to heal and have orgasms at the same time. That's all.
Absolutely. I will say, yes,
Exactly.
heaven, yes, to the disruption. We're here to be the sacred disruptions.
Yes.
And I feel that those of us with the imprintation of erotic leadership, it's always been there is something that I've noticed. Like I was deeply, deeply connected to my erotic nature when I was younger, and I had such a reputation of being a whore and a slut for being explorative with this energy. And it's been so powerful to reclaim it as my channel to the divine, and in a way where it's literally like revivified me from the inside out and allowed me to like fully own my role in the world. But I will say, like, there is nothing like really profound sex. Like, I recently had a session recently. I mean, I just had a session recently, and it literally changed my DNA. I felt my cells completely reorient. And what will happen after I have an erotic experience that's that potent and medicinal on so many different levels, and it's like allowing me to surrender. It's allowing me to connect dots. It is so spiritual in its nature. Yeah. I will come and I will journal about it, and I will sip on the experience, and I'll allow it to imprint into my field and land even deeper. And I have not experienced anything even close to the transformation that I've had in the erotic realms.
Wow. Babe, it's real. It's
really, we all got here.
100%, 100%. And, when it comes to things like kink, I think there is so much fear and hesitancy and rejection around it, because we've all in our life have experienced unconsensual pain and power and submission and all of these things. And we're constantly kind of navigating our lives in ways that, we might say to ourselves, like, I want the life partner. I want the 7-figure salary, but nobody's really looking at what's in the way? Like, what's in the way of you achieving everything you desire and more? And instead of, getting depressed over it, like, what if we brought the things that are in the way, whether it's, you're sort of a masochist to certain things. You actually say you want a partnership, but you keep aligning with people who are unavailable, emotionally unavailable, or they're avoidant attachment or things like that. And like, let's play with that then. Like, let's play with this idea. I had this girlfriend, for example, she was always complaining about the men she was dating. There's no good men. And every time I meet someone, he disappears on me or he doesn't call me back. And she's constantly chasing them. And I was like, girl, like, I love you and I'm happy to hold space again for you. But part of me wants to ask you, do you want to do fucking something about this? Like, do you want to do something? And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, why don't we play with this? Like, why don't we play with this idea of, not getting your needs met? And like, why don't I like tie you up and I could tease you, or I could like edge you like towards orgasm and not let you get it. And like, I want you to almost feel and own the pleasure of not getting what you want, because you're doing it to yourself unconsciously already. Wow. So let's fucking do it for reals. Or, we could switch roles and you could do it to me. Like you can have the power, you can dangle the carrot, you can be the one in charge and see what that feels like. And we could do it both ways and notice what happens on the other side of that. Like, but we're moving the energy and we're tapping into a different perspective and we're interrupting a pattern and we're doing all of these things together while we're in a state of expansion. And I think that's way more interesting than just calling your friend and bitching about the same bullshit over and over again. I'm like, let's do something about it. Let's play about it. Let's play about it because you're doing this because you're getting something out of it. And if we can illuminate what that is, then we can shift it, you know, all through the consciousness and things like that. So consciousness and pleasure is just so much fun that way.
Right. Oh, that's so beautiful and so powerful. That, I mean,
Yeah.
that's true friendship. It's like, am I going to enable
I know.
am I going to enable this pattern
Right.
and continue to witness you cycling in the same piece? Or are we going to do something about it? Are we going to play, pray, and like move it through the body in a visceral way?
Yeah.
Because when you go into the somatics, you're literally, it's a technology to shift your reality. And you shift your access point to the way that you're engaging life and life is engaging you. And I mean, the sex, eroticism is such a potent way to reprogram these pieces. But, you know, and again, I haven't explored kink to the degree that we're talking about here. So it's super fascinating. My everything is like stimulated and invigorated hearing about all the different ways that you can tap into these pieces because it's a different form of therapy, you know, working with the most intimate, vulnerable parts of a person.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that people come to you with the most?
Oh, good question. There's a lot of different things, actually. Oftentimes there's people who are struggling with past shame. That's a very common thing where people are carrying shame. Maybe they came from a religious background. Maybe there's been some trauma of some kind and they want to move through it. So there could be someone reaching out to me who wants to understand, like, how can I get into a healthier place with my desires? Like I had a man who he's Muslim. He was born in Egypt and he came to see me because he was living in New York City. He had been in an arranged marriage and he was absolutely miserable. You know, he'd been in this marriage, sexless marriage, and he had been carrying fantasies around dominant women kidnapping him and taking them to to their lair and forcing him to do unspeakable acts and spanking him and tying him up. And he had all of these like fantasies for as long as he could remember, but he couldn't share any of them because he had to be, you know, behave himself. He had to be good in his family. He did everything he was told. He was told to what school to go to, who to marry, where to live, like you name it. He complied with whatever his dad or his parents told him to do. So when he came to me and he shared this fantasy with me, it was for him, like, I just want to be able to touch this and like understand why it's here. It's like haunting my dreams and I want to understand it better. And I found it to be really fascinating because when he was sharing his fantasy with me, I actually started laughing and he was like, what the fuck is so funny? He didn't say fuck, but he was like, what's so funny? And I was like, well, this is really interesting. You know, we've had some intake sessions and you've shared about how in your life you've been sort of forced into everything that you're doing and everything that you are. And here you are sharing your deepest fantasy. And it's all about being forced into doing things you don't want to do by powerful women. And but it's very sexy. It's very erotic. Like, I think it's really wise of your psyche to actually create this fantasy so you can get some relief from the pain and the disempowerment that you're in. Like, how cool to eroticize that. And that's what people do a lot in their fantasies. There's a lot of people who eroticize the unmet needs that they had as they were growing up as children. People talk about analyzing your dreams and looking at the symbolism in dreams. I say do the same for your fantasies. Like some of the biggest fantasies people have is having more than one partner at the same time. And I get curious around like, well, what is that? Like, what need does that meet when you have more than one partner? Are you feeling like you're getting a sense of overwhelm so that you can just like let go of your mind and just be present in the moment? Or is it a sense of like you feel powerful and desirable because maybe two women want you at the same time and you feel on top of the world? Like, what need does that meet? Because the fantasy is just a strategy to meet that need. And
Oof.
there's so many ways we can meet our needs. There's so many strategies. So I told this Muslim man, I said, let's do the scene your way to the T. I'm down to do that. But the next time we play, we're going to do it my way. And he was like, okay. So we did it his way. He had the most profound experience. He was able to really dive in deep, and he was so grateful and felt so alive. And it was really incredible. But I forced him to do the things and carried out the scene as he depicted. About a month later, he returned to do it my way. And I said, we're going to do the scene again, very similarly. But the difference is, and this is the only difference, is that you have to ask for everything. I will not move a muscle unless you ask for it. And don't get me wrong, if you ask for something I'm not available for, I will let you know. And you have to ask, or we're just going to stand here the entire 3 or 4 hours staring at each other awkwardly.
Wow.
And he was like, whoa. So he asked to be tied up. He asked to be kidnapped. He asked to be spanked. He asked to be edged. He asked for every single thing. And he was just crying, 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 crying the whole time. And when the scene finally concluded, I was holding him in my arms for aftercare. And I asked him, are there any downloads or is there anything coming through in this moment that you want to speak to and say aloud? And he's like, yeah, in this moment, I just feel that if I can be brave enough and ask for what I want, then it's possible I can get it. And if I can do that here, I want to do that everywhere. Like I want to start asking for what I want, because that's going to get me closer to it than denying I have the want in the first place. And so that completely changed his trajectory of his life. He did end up leaving that marriage, which actually was a really good thing for both of them. And he ended up, meeting like-minded play partners in the city he lived in New York City. And instead of being in the submissive role for him, he actually really started to embrace the leadership role. He started to be a rope rigger. He started to lead other people through their fantasies and their experiences in healthy, supportive, loving ways. And he kind of switches between the two, but he really stepped into his power when he was willing to really surrender to what his desires were. And that's the kind of work and things that people can achieve in those types of sessions when they're brave enough to really step into the fire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is profound.
Mm.
And the piece that really tugs at the heart the most is like the emotional release that happens through this visceral experience and all of the metaphor that's infused into it, and the way in which you're literally doing this healing of like your whole timeline of existence, and you're bringing it into this role playing sort of, right? I feel that there can be a lot of healing that can happen in role play when you're conscious about the dynamics that you're healing and that you're role playing with. And I love that you just touched on the fact that and this just like broke my brain, but the fact that, our fantasies, if you really get down to the nitty gritty and you play detective with them, are representing something that's wanting to be worked out. Yeah. And typically we're fetishizing and creating a pleasure in our soma around something that maybe was traumatic or something that was not rightful to us or didn't feel rightful to us. And there's a way, because I've noticed that too, is like the ways in which we will pleasurize the things that we actually maybe don't want, but we fantasize about them, and then it gets us really hot. And so to have a space to actually act some of these pieces out in a therapeutic way is like groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's so true. It's interesting because there's so many different pathways into this work, but for people who come to me, they may want to explore receiving without guilt, and others may want to reclaim their voice or their no. I work with people that have had a lot of trauma, and could be physical abuse, could be sexual trauma, but they get to have their no, and they get to know that it's going to always be honored and respected, and they get to say, how much and when and what it looks like. So it's amazing when people are moving into this, like not just through their minds, but like really the healing happens in the body, as you and I know so well. And when we are not just performing this erotic engagement, which I see so often, and people are really performative when it comes to sex. And it's like finding ways to embody it with a consciousness and intention and reverence for the human body and heart. Um, that creates such turn on in all of us. You know what I mean? It's one of our greatest desires is to be seen and known. It's also one of our greatest shames. It's this interesting paradox of what we want most is what we're most ashamed of. And then there's a quote I like to tell people, because you can't talk about kink or sex without talking about shame. But John Waters is a famous director. He says, I'm so glad I was born Catholic because sex will always be dirty for me. And I love that because he's saying, like, I know where my shame comes from. It comes from the Catholic Church. And I'm not only going to let that stand in my way, I'm going to actually let it be a catalyst for more pleasure, more thrill, more juice, more energy. And so it's this idea of like, even our shame has value. Like everything that we have has value. I used to want to eradicate shame. I used to want to like say, let's get rid of shame. I don't do that anymore. Now I like kind of make friends with it, let it sit beside me. I don't let it drive the car, but I acknowledge that that creates a lot of electricity and juice, and it's there to be a messenger, and it can actually really bring us to even more intense places of play with our partners and with ourselves. So it's just fascinating to see like how deep you can go with these things. And when you're with someone you trust and who can meet you there, oh, like anything is possible. Like anything is possible.
I love it so much.
It's so good.
It's so good. There's so many layers. I can imagine it's just infinite.
It is. Yeah. It's so many things. And as someone who's been doing this work for so long, I'm a switch. I consider myself a switch. I love being in the submissive or follower role. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. And we think about, being able to play with the Dom sub, that's a polarity. The masculine feminine is a polarity, the artist muse, the night and day, like these polarities, and just knowing that we can like dance within this huge spectrum of possibility. Like, people use sexuality like they use fast food. It's like, oh, I'm hungry. Let's run over to In-N-Out Burger and get something to quench our, hunger. And people do that with sex all the time. And I don't mind that every once in a while, but I don't want to fucking live off of In-N-Out Burger. Like I don't want to, just quiet hunger. I want to, be broken open, and I want to help others like meet me in that place. And that is, I think, the capacity or the potential that's available. And most people just don't even know that that's possible, that that's even an option. So it's so fun to be able to introduce them to that possibility.
Yeah, it's like the quick fix versus like deep soul satiation.
Oh yeah.
And the ceremony and the conversation that gets to be had through sex when you're attuned and reverent and really like in it in that way with that consciousness. And yeah, I want to ask you, you said earlier, you call yourself a motivational spanker.
Yeah.
So I'm curious where like spanking and flogging, where this term came from and like how that moves in your work.
I mean, I love the motivational spanker impact play, which is essentially repeatedly striking another person for sexual gratification. That's what impact play means. Is one of my most favorite tools for expansion, without question. And the motivational spanker is like a play on words because I do a lot of public speaking, but being able to use impact play not just as an erotic punishment, because that's what most people think of when they think about impact play or spanking between consenting adults. It's a erotic punishment, but I like to use it as a way of moving energy in the body. You know what I mean? And there's a way that not only are you moving energy through the body, but you're making contact with different chakra points within the body as well. So like if I'm spanking someone and they're, maybe on a bench and bent over, I'm making contact with their first chakra. I'm making contact with the root. That's where the buttocks and the perineum actually are. So that's connected to safety, wealth, security, family, home. I let them know, like, I'm going to be activating this part of your body because I really want you to be dropped into your root chakra. And while I'm spanking you, just so you know, my heart chakra, the fourth chakra, my arms and hands are an extension of my heart. So I'm touching you with connection, with love, with presence. And that's how I'm making contact with your body, and I'm being impacted as well. Because when I land that strike, there's a reverberation that goes up into my arms and through my heart. If I let it in, and we are connected in this circle of energy that's give and take. Even if they're just laying there and receiving, I'm still receiving as well. And there's almost a sense of them surrendering to me while I'm surrendering to the higher power who's guiding me through that session, through that experience. And it can be so, so profound. And once you start moving that energy and you're bringing blood and energy down to the nether regions towards the genitals, you're creating sensitivity in that area too. So people can have even more powerful orgasms because it's so close to the genitals. And it can be so, so interesting when you see people open up in these ways, because it's so associated with, being bad, wrong, being in trouble, being, ostracized, things of that
Naughty.
nature. But
Yeah.
I have clients, they cry, they laugh, they shake, they scream, and they drop into this state of altered state of unconsciousness or consciousness, excuse me, during these scenes, because the body doesn't lie. Like, it holds everything. And sometimes it just needs the right rhythm or pressure or presence to help it like release. You know what I mean? So it's cool to motivate people through sensation, through rhythm, through intensity. I'm doing a class next month where I'm going to be unveiling my psychedelic spanking formula, which is essentially helping people drop into altered states of consciousness through impact play and through styles of touch and through erotic tension. Because again, this can be a medicine journey, except the medicine is touch and trust and this like erotic presence. So yeah, I love spanking. It's such a cool tool to have, and you can really take people to super, super deep places with it. It's so much fun.
I love that. And speaking into the perineum and like that area and the root chakra and the stimulation,
Yeah.
I know that we're talking about kink and impact play, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on anal.
Mm-hmm.
And, because that is like, I feel that there are so many codes on surrender, on like when people are like, oh, you're so anal. Like, chances are they probably have a really tight asshole. Like,
Right.
it's like, even if you tune in, sometimes I'll like tune in and I'm like, why am I clenching? Well, so I'm just curious, like, what your whole stance on anal is, any like codes that you have for us.
We'll talk about the taboo. A kink, how I define kink is being turned on by the taboo. And it's interesting because although the anus is just another body part, there is a lot of fear and confusion and judgment of that area. And anal is one of the deepest taboo frontiers that you can try. So it can be a really sacred portal, like literally and metaphorically. So it can be an ultimate symbol of surrender for a lot of people, like where you're able to be in that vulnerability and tap into the body's deeper layers of holding fear, shame, tension, like where you can kind of open that and expose that. So it's true. You're like, people are walking around with a clenched asshole, energetically, and it's how people are bracing against life all the time. What I get curious about, Zoe, is essentially like if anyone has a charge against anything, whether it's anal or spanking or being submissive, if someone's like, fuck that shit, or like they have like a real charge to it, I get curious, because that's different than just, oh, I don't prefer that. It's not a preference of mine. That's different than being like, fuck no. And getting curious around like, well, what are you bracing against? Because if you are able to let go of that resistance and really tap into your breath and trust that space, like so much like orgasmic pleasure can come from that, just like in any other place of the body. So like maybe the asshole is the gatekeeper to the unconscious,
Should that be the name of our episode?
It's the body. It's like, the body keeps the score, as that famous book. But it's like, yeah, like approach that lovely place with love and reverence and patience, just like you would with any other part of the body, with the genitals, with the breasts, with the lips, like, and it could teach you. It could teach you about pacing. That part of your body could teach you about permission, about trust, about asking before entering, about how things just open when we feel safest. Right.
And when we breathe, when
Oh,
we're not like clenching so hard and resisting and fighting. And I find that that's like such a powerful part. I mean, even just in self-pleasure is noticing it's such a meditative space of like, where is my energy?
mm,
How am I feeling in my body? Where am I clenched? Because if I'm clenched here, then I'm not open to life and all of the magic that wants to pour in for me. I'm blocking it. I'm blocking potential lovers. I'm blocking money. I'm blocking all of the riches that I can experience. I'm blocking my energy from flowing through me out into the world. So I love, and like we've been speaking on so much, it's like to be that intimately engaged with your somatics in a
mm,
way where you're also resensitizing your relationship with pleasure, your relationship with power,
mm,
right? And then I always say like erotic innocence is when your sacral and your heart are connected.
mm.
So it's like that like sexy, like, you know, like yummy turn on is connected with that sweet, loving, innocent, like purity. And they weave together. And then it's like, oh, that's like, that is life force. That's life. We look at nature. Nature's so erotic.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love that you're saying this, honey, because at the end of my play parties, I do play parties all over the country. And at the end, I say to the group, and I mean it so sincerely and so genuinely, and I say to them, wasn't that the most wholesome evening? Like, wasn't that so sweet when I saw you in that train? I was like, aw, like, and I fucking mean it. Like, I'm like, tear, like, aw, like, fucking rooting for you and your pleasure and your willingness to go deep and your openness. Because there is a wholeness there, or the wholesomeness there. And of course, there's a wholeness available to us if we tap into that possibility. And I love the play parties that I do because it's so community focused, where it really is like, not just about like, hey, let's get together and do an orgy and have a gangbang. It's not like that at all. It's actually like, what's your deepest desire and how can we as a community support you in experiencing that? And it doesn't even have to be sexual. No genitals have to be touched or exposed whatsoever. It could still be highly erotic. And I say, fuck Make a Wish Foundation. Like, fuck Make a Wish Foundation. Let's make a fantasy come true foundation. Because I'm telling you, when people really experience their fantasies fully and completely, like things shift and people open up and they get so bright and shiny. It's so, so fun. I remember one time I was going through a breakup, and I had felt so undesirable after this relationship. I had felt so ugly. I had felt so like lost. And I had asked the room for their presence as I shared a fantasy. And the fantasy was like, I want all the men in the room to just like overwhelm me with desire. And like, I want you to be like primal and like pretty much inappropriate about it. Like, I give you full consent, just don't touch my genitals or my nipples. Other than that, fair game. And I want to be ravished, and I want to be grabbed, and I want to be like devoured. And at one point during the play party, like this big Viking looking man came over and he's like, "You're coming with me." And he like threw me over his shoulder and he took me into this room and threw me down on the bed. And next thing I know, there's like 20 guys on top of me at one
Wow.
time. They're pulling my hair and they're choking me and they're lightly slapping me and they're spanking me and they're massaging me and they're telling me I'm a good girl and that I'm so fucking hot and they want me so badly. And I was just like, like in this state of like overwhelm where like it felt like everything in my body was having an orgasm. I'm not talking about just genitally focused. I'm talking about my eyelashes were coming and my hair and my toenails. And I was just like the whole time, like just receiving on this like intense level, this attention and desire that I had asked for. And when it started to subside, I just like had the biggest release and just cried. And I just cried out all this pain that I was feeling from this past relationship. And also the way that I left myself during that relationship and how I didn't see my own worth and I didn't desire myself and I didn't see my own beauty or recognize the qualities I wanted him to see in me. I didn't recognize it in myself. And it was just one of the most beautiful experiences. And I tell you, babe, I was high for fucking months after that. I made so much money after that experience. I was making money. Like I was unstoppable. I was a magnet to success. And I felt on top of the world, and I felt like the most beautiful goddess that ever existed. And that lived inside of me for a long time. And it still does on a lot of levels. But I needed community to help remind me of who the fuck I was. And that's the shit I get excited about at play parties and in erotic spaces, that's possible, as well as the slap and the tickle and the orgasms as well, you know?
Wow, that is profound. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that story.
Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure.
It's so nice to like receive the meat and the nectar, from this realm, because I feel like a lot of the times there can be so much abstractness and so much room for like imagination to take hold and things to get a little like fuzzy, but to actually have these concrete stories and like visuals, and you took us into these journeys with you is powerful. And yeah, just thank you for sharing them.
I love it. Thank you for
And it's hot. It's hot to be able to be in the realm of possibility where these things that have only lived in your mind or like in the fantasy realm when you're having sex, right? Because also our fantasy sometimes is the way that we generate climax. If we're like starting to feel at that edge, I know that a lot of the times it'll play out, and there's almost like this psychic fabric to the tonality of our eroticism, like when we're having sex, when we're erotically engaged. It's interesting to track, like, what are the fantasies that maybe come through? What are the things that actually bring me to climax when I'm not fully just sensorially engaged? And that's, I think, a lot of what we've been touching on. And then the other thing is the mantra lately has been hot and wholesome.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, we love it hot and wholesome. And I love that that's what you're just speaking into too, is like that wholesome piece is really what creates that safety.
Yes.
And so like when my now fiance and I got together, he used to go to play parties, and I was very turned off knowing that that was a thing. And
Yep.
I would kind of be in some of these spaces and I would recognize a lot of leaky energy. It wasn't as conscious or as contained. And now being in this new iteration, this new season, living where we do, it's like there's so much around conscious kink, tantra, like so many beautiful spaces to explore this kind of energy. And there's a budding fascination with all the elements. And I think you just crystallized a lot of those pieces. And
Mm. Mm.
yeah, and in exploring, like, what are the things that we're so afraid of in this realm, and how can we take the charge out of it through actually meeting it? And this is basically shadow integration, just through eroticism.
Totally. Yeah, it's like not just even about making fantasies come true. It's like remembering who we were before the world told us to be small or told us who we should be. And it's so fun that we can make these shifts and changes with laughter and lube and maybe some leather. That's fucking great. And maybe not. You don't even need any of those things. All you need is your hands, your heart, and your head, in a lot of ways. And you can create so many amazing experiences for yourself and for your partners. Like, don't get caught up, especially for those interested in kink, don't get caught up in the toys. Like, don't get caught up in the furniture and all of that. That's not what this is about. It's about connection. And it's about really seeing each other. And the hot and wholesome, like, oh, that's my mantra now too, girl. I love that. It's true. Like, let's embrace like this new era of what it means to be whole, and what it means to have all parts of ourselves celebrated and accepted for who we are. And it's that aliveness that creates the success in our lives that we yearn for, that aliveness that cannot be taken or given. It just is. And it's something that we all have access to. And sometimes we just need to kind of clear or spank and slap the shit out of the way that kind of, masked it or took us away of that truth. So I love,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, I know that after a really good erotic session, like even with my beloved, it changes me, like I said earlier, on a cellular level. And the way in which that impacts the way I'm showing up in the world, the way I'm, even engaging my altar and sipping on the experience. And then, like I said, I like will go into a space where I just like journal about it, and I'm romanticizing it, and it becomes this living embodied erotic poetry. And so, yeah, huge advocate for erotic activism and leadership. And my last question for you is, for someone who's listening to this that has been challenged by the nature of their erotic fantasy that they have been feeling shame around or holding in for a very long time, or have maybe never even uttered to themselves or another, what would you say to them?
Mm. Yeah, I like to say to people, like, for those who are listening to this in this moment, like, if you feel like your heart's beating faster, or you feel like there's a tingling happening, or maybe you're just feeling like a little bit called, I want to just let you know it's not random. Like, it's not random. It's like literally your Eros is whispering you home. Like, it's calling you home. And it's important to like do your research and know who are the reputable sources and places that can help you answer that calling. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of fucking trash out there when it comes to erotic educational spaces. So please do your homework, but continue to follow that thread. Like, whether it's with me or Zoe or with someone who makes you feel safe and turned on, follow it, because that's your magic. Like, that's where your magic lives. And there's no reason why any of us have to do any of this alone. Like, that's what we're on this planet for, is to walk each other home at the end of the day. So like, reach out, and getting that support and that training, and having that safe space as you explore this is so important. And also, I'll just add, and in going at a baby step pace if you can, because we get so excited and we're like a kid in a candy store and we're like, wee, and that's where we can get re-traumatized, or there can be vulnerability hangovers, and there can be consent regrets. So I just really can't urge people enough then to say, like, continue to follow that thread, but find out like what is your baby step way into this, because nervous system is everything. And making sure you're taking care of your nervous system and staying regulated as you go through this journey is going to set you up to win even more so. And it's going to help you integrate what you learn even more. So do your research and follow that thread. It is whispering you home, and it's doing it for a reason. And and I'm always here if anyone needs to get their hands dirty. I'm like, yeah, bring your dirty mind and let's get your hands dirty now. Because it's so much fun to play in these spaces when you're with the right people, and feeling supported and safe in it.
So beautiful. And I just want to echo that one piece one more time. Your Eros is whispering you home. I love that. And yeah, reach out to Kimmy. She is embodied in the codex of erotic leadership and sweetness. Like, you're so sweet. She's got that honey nectar, but she can also crack the whip.
Oh yeah.
Just go look at her Instagram and peruse, and you can absorb that and feel those codes. So Kimmy, where can the listeners find you, follow you, and what do you have on offer coming up?
Thank you. Yes. So please follow me on Instagram. It's at Kimi Inch. And my website is www.andmorepresents.com. And we have an event happening in Austin. It's our only event happening in Austin. It's a 3-day workshop called Tied and Teased. And it's going to be deep diving into the ideas, the emotionality, psychology, and the physicality of impact play, bondage and restraints, verbal erotic skills, and tension and tease. So it's going to be a really beautiful experience. And we'd love to have you. And we also have other online courses and other ways of titrating. If you're not ready for that in-person event, we have online stuff that you can find on my website as well.
Yes, so beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimmy, for the work you're doing in the world, for coming and joining us today, for being on this courageous path and sharing so much potency with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you to all the listeners. Mwah.